Archons. Archons are an invisible, to us, group of entities that come from a planet that's modus operandi is hate. The modus operandi of our planet, instigated by our God, is love. We have mentioned this fact many times. However, love, by its very nature, is gentle, kind, and non-violent. In the face of hate, brutality, and violence, gentle love finds it hard to win in a confrontation, at least in the short term. Archons live in a dimension just outside of the physical dimension, and, as was stated, because they have chosen to ignore their higher frequencies, are totally cut off from any positive power that automatically flows from the higher realms into the lower. Thus, these beings, the Archons, have all of their consciousness concentrated in this one etheric band, all else, in effect, not existing, as far as they are concerned. Now, these entities, the Archons, are totally unaware and totally non-affected by any thoughts and feelings of their higher concepts. Nothing that we would consider holy or godlike enters their minds or their realities. But these creatures are real, thinking beings, although if we were to meet one and try to converse with it, we would find their thoughts so alien to ours that it would be quite impossible to find any common ground for dialogue. They, like all life, have existed for a very long time, but have made no progress towards the Godhead, which is the prime consideration of the majority of life. Thus, they are unique, outcasts from all other life, containing not evil as such, but total non-consideration for anything or anyone outside of themselves. However, like all things, they are mortal. Virtually all other life progresses slowly from one frequency to another, discarding the lower frequencies as they do, rather like peeling the layers from an onion until, finally, they reveal their goal, the Godhead. Although, with all life, it takes an enormous amount of time to move to that final vibration, the Godhead, all creatures are aware, at some level, that the frequency exists, and so all creatures, whatever their shape, form or origin, retain a sense of holiness, albeit, in some creatures, closely hidden from their actual level, but, nevertheless, it is there, and guides all life upwards from frequency to frequency, carrier wave to carrier wave, the lower ones being cast off as they rise. All life does this except one group, the Archons. They have remained static for so long that they cannot imagine that anything else exists, any higher form of life exists. This, over eons of time, has molded a particular character, both in an individual sense and in a collective regard. Thus, they would, from our perspective, seem to be very one-sided, totally focused on the very things that the majority of us try to reject: fear, hate, jealousy, and all the things that we consider negative and make us unhappy. Thus, most of us seek to live in situations where these emotions are not uppermost in our lives, and we try to replace them with love and friendliness. But these unfortunate beings, the Archons, know only these negative emotions. Indeed, if someone spoke to one of these Archons and suggested that there were other, better emotions that he could include in his makeup, he would think we were mad. Nothing that could be considered positive bias would enter the mind of the archonic creatures, and so they live in a world of hate. A dark world indeed. So, to make things clear, these Archons are not aware of any frequencies higher than the one in which they live, but, a long time ago, they became aware of a frequency beneath theirs. This, unfortunately, is the one that physical life lives in, your world. The aim of all life is to move in frequency. With the vast majority of life, the movement takes them upwards in frequency into the higher, more holy frequencies. In the case of the Archons, they too feel the need to explore other frequencies and progress into them if they can. But, as they are totally unaware that higher realms exist, this drive took them to explore the only frequency they could, which happens to be the physical realm. It must be remembered that Archons are non-physical, and so they don't have physical bodies. Thus, they found it impossible, actually, to integrate this lower frequency into their creation. They remain etheric beings. However, the drive to move in frequency is paramount in all life, and the Archons are no exception. Many long years ago, they found that they could, in certain circumstances, integrate your world somewhat, not in a physical sense, but by taking over the minds of humans. However, they hit a snag, a problem that they could not deal with. As they tried to integrate with humans, they found that the minds of most humans, even those long years ago, contained elements of the higher, more holy frequencies. This was incompatible with their frequency, and so they found that they could not mold with the majority of humans. However, the drive to change frequency, being irresistible, they looked for a way to resolve the problem and find a group of people with whom they could integrate, people like-minded with them, totally concentrated on self, with none of the higher emotions present in their personalities. Long years ago, they discovered a group that thought like them. This group, we consider to be victims of an illness that causes them to be unlike most of us. The majority of people are naturally gentle, kind, loving, and generous, putting others, if not first in their lives, at least more or less equal to them, and worthy of consideration. However, there is this relatively small group of people who do not think like the majority. This group only think of themselves, their needs, wants, and ambitions, and are willing to do anything to satisfy their aims. We call them psychopaths. This was the very group that the Archons were searching for, people like-minded with them, and so they found it easy to mold with these people, integrate their personalities, and, virtually, to become one with them. However, these psychopathic people found themselves outcasts from most societies, either banished, imprisoned, or executed. This did not serve the archonic needs. There was no point in integrating with a person, only to find that person banished, imprisoned, or to have his physical incarnation terminated. So the solution was found. It was decided to put these people above the law, and the system of making them rulers was introduced. Further, over time, it was found that not all psychopaths could be made into kings or queens, so other systems were set up, placing as many Archon-influenced people in positions of power and authority, the idea being that they were placed in situations where the Archon influence, for various forms of negativity, could be exercised, but the people being influenced were above the law, untouchable by any person not thinking as they did. So, over many generations, in virtually all countries of the world, the psychopathic people are in the top positions, outside of any control by other, more noble people. All this was kept strictly secret from the public, who, if they had been informed of what was going on, would have taken steps to remedy the situation. So, this is the sad state that the physical world, and the physical situation is in. This message is, in part, intended to be an alarm call, a wake-up call of what is going on. Now, it must be explained that not all people in power are Archon-controlled psychopaths, but it must be realized that many, indeed most, are. However, nothing lasts forever. The only constant is change, and change is, at last, occurring both in the physical part of planet Earth, and, more importantly, in the etheric and spiritual dimensions. In simple terms, life swings backward and forwards between evil and godliness over long periods of time. The actual swing of this pendulum, to describe a full cycle, takes about 600,000 years. For half of this time, life swings into evil and back again, and for the other half, it swings into holiness or goodness and back again. It is difficult to find an exact word that describes the opposite of evil. So, we use words like holiness, goodness, kindness, and so on. From the null point, the bottom of the swing of the pendulum, for about 150,000 years, life swings into evil. Then for another 150,000 years, it swings back again to the null point. Then for about 150,000 years, it swings into holiness, and for another 150,000 years, it swings back again the null point. This has been going on for a long, long time. It so happens that life as you live it has been swinging back from evil to the null point. It reached the null point in the year 2012, at which point it started to swing towards positivity. However, even though for the next 300,000 years we will be in the positive, holy swing of the pendulum, the change from evil to goodness happens very slowly. The change is barely noticeable at first. This change takes the form of an energetic wave rising that will eventually wake people up to realize their spiritual makeup as they start to make contact with their higher vibrational bodies and take steps to eliminate from power these archonic-driven souls who have been causing so much harm for so long. However, the Archons, like so many psychopaths, have as their base drive fear. They are constantly on the lookout for attack. As was mentioned, with effect from the year 2012, the pendulum of life swung from evil through the null point and started its slow but relentless swing into positivity. This is also known to black magicians and to those of so-called high status or position, and it is seriously scaring them. They know that their time of dominance is basically over. The full effect is not fully observed yet, but will become more and more apparent as the years pass. Along with the loss of power, your so-called leaders are also frightened of the public turning on them and wreaking the harm on them that they inflicted on the public for so long. We hope that this never happens, of course. We should forgive our enemies and pray for them as Jesus commanded us to do. They will pay for their crimes, inevitably, when their incarnations are over, and they have to go off to hell for a long time. The Archons are also aware that ascension is occurring, and they too are worried about losing their influence over certain psychopaths, and of losing power to hurt people of Earth, which brings them pleasure at the moment, and has done for the last 300,000 years. God-loving people do not require fear as a dominant part of their personalities, as they instinctively know that they are part of the God force, and God is love. If the love given by God is an integral part of the personality of virtually all people, having been made by this force we call God, fear has very little hold over them, even those who pretend that God does not exist. So, love for all humanity is present in the makeup of most people, with the exception of the psychopaths, and more importantly, the psychopaths under the domination of the Archons. With this group, fear is their dominant motive and controls most of their actions. They are constantly on the lookout for any force, any action, by any person or group, that could attack them and reduce their control. So, they take whatever actions they can to prevent anything from happening that could affect them in any way. This fear of attack manifests itself in many ways. They ban people from demonstrating for peace if they can. They fill the leisure moments of many people with various entertainments, sport, TV, cinema, and so on, that keeps the people from thinking. They fill the entertainment areas with as much violence as they can, in the desire to keep the public in a state of negativity, so that the actions of the leaders are not far removed from the actions portrayed in so-called entertainment. Thus, there is much importance placed on sports, boxing, football, rugby, swimming, running, and all the various athletic sports, all designed to be competitive, and all designed to keep people in fear, in case their sportsman, their team, fails to win. The television is full of films of violence and programs of the harmful things going on in the world, all designed to generate fear. The financial situation is designed to create fear, in case there is not sufficient money earned to survive. All this has been carefully designed for two reasons. To promote fear, which is archonic in nature. To make the public as much like the leaders as possible, so that they do not see what the leaders are doing, as the thoughts of the public are similar to the thoughts of the psychopaths that are in power. These Archon-controlled psychopaths understand that if the public realized their God force and turned to it, they would see through what has been constructed by the Archons, and would remove their minions, your leaders, from power. This day, fortunately, will come. It is time. Now, it has been suggested by many that the Archons use fear as food. This is not strictly true. Non-physical beings do not require sustenance. However, it is also true that all energy expended must be replaced from somewhere. Physical people eat to sustain physical life. Astral beings naturally draw sustenance from the God force that is everywhere. However, the Archons, being negative, have cut themselves off from the God force, so that cannot sustain them. Therefore, they do use fear, generated by their actions, as a sort of sustenance. It has actually very little regenerative power, compared to the God force, but it is all they have. It must be realized that, being non-physical, they cannot die, but they can grow weak. In the past, they managed, through wars, slavery and serf systems, heartless religions and so on, to create a lot of fear, which sustained them, but nowadays, even wars create less fear, as there is very little hand-to-hand combat, which was a source of generating actual terror. So the latest thing that has been invented is terrorism. Terrorism. We could go on. However, the means of combating these Archons is simply to starve them of fear, by the act of laying down our arms and coming together in brotherly love. To achieve this, however, will take time, as we have, in a way, a chicken and egg situation. To defeat the Archons, we need peace, but to create peace, we need to defeat the Archons. However, we are not alone in this battle. The most important thing is a natural cycle that is occurring, that is moving the galactic system into a time of peace. As the effect of this is felt by more and more people, so the tide will turn. This will happen, it is inevitable, and the Archons know this, which is why they are putting so much effort into a last-ditch attempt to cause chaos. It is the nature of Archons that, if they can't have something, they will destroy, so that no one can have it. So, we must be on the qui-vive for any, by psychopaths being influenced by Archons, to create a nuclear war. Once again, we will get help should this idea come to fruition, and a nuclear war will not be allowed to happen. Thus, the ultimate destiny of man is to live in peace.